Hello everybody, and while you're settling in, welcome to this Origina hosted webinar. Our first in a series of webinars we'll be hosting during 2020. My name is Brendan Walsh and I'm the co-host of the webinar. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at Origina, and I am joined by my colleague Sharon Cormack, who's our Global Director of Inside Sales.
Hello, Brendan. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Sharon, and thanks for working with me on the webinar today. Today we are going to be discussing the trends for 2020 that will influence and impact IT strategies, probably during 2020 and into the future. And so, as it is 2020 and it's still the first month of 2020, many people, journalists, analysts have been writing about their top trends, and depending on their particular areas of expertise. So we see lots of people writing about AI and 5G and autonomous driving and all the things that might be trendy moving into the year. So we picked a number of technology trends and initiatives that we think are going to be top of mind for the customers that we talk to on a daily basis, and that will be of more importance to those of you on today's webinar. So again, thanks for joining and listening. So we're going to be talking about things like cost optimization. We're going to be looking at cloud, artificial intelligence, TechQuilibrium, and then we'll be taking some questions throughout the webinar. So please do post some questions throughout the webinar, and we'll hope to get to those at the end. There is also going to be a poll, so I think on the left-hand side of your screen you should see a little red button beside something that says poll, and if you click on that you'll be asked a question. So throughout the webinar you can post your answer and we'll give the results at the end. So as I said, this is a series of webinars, so we'll also give you the dates and times of our next webinar, which is on the 25th of March, but we'll come to that in the details at the end. And as I said, we want to keep this interactive, so keep the questions coming in. And for those of you who don't know, actually tomorrow at 10 a.m., my CEO, Tomas Leary, and myself are also hosting a podcast, which is related to how large software mega vendors market themselves versus new tech firms. So that might be worth tuning into at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and our podcast can be found on Spotify, SoundCloud, and if you also go to our LinkedIn page. All right. So we've a lot to get through in the next half an hour, so we'll get stuck in. All right.
Great.
So the first area we're going to talk about is cost optimization. So some of you might be saying, trend 2020, seen this before. However, it's still a trend that we're seeing moving into 2020 and beyond. And maybe it's not as sexy as AI or hybrid cloud and other trends being written about, but it's still right up there, and savvy CIOs are still needing to free up capital and free up direct cost to pay for the hot tech that funds digital transformation. So it's still very much top of mind and still on the agenda. So, you know, cost optimization covers a lot of areas. It's a vast array of areas, and so maybe we give it some definition, right? So as to where costs can be uncovered. So one of the areas, for example, might be, particularly for the audience here today, is obtaining best pricing and terms for, you know, future business purchase or purchase during 2020. An example might be for those of you negotiating end-of-year deals with Salesforce, whose end of year is January 31st. I'm sure we've all prepared in advance for those negotiations, or certainly we're thinking about, can you get a deal before this Friday with Salesforce to reduce your costs for the next coming period. We've also read with interest an article recently by Mark Bartrick, who's from Forrester, and amazingly, Mark, if you want to check out his LinkedIn page, negotiated a $7 million reduction on an SAP renewal, and from what I understand, without any degradation of service. They just looked at the contract, looked at what software was being used, and managed to find a significant saving for a US client. So there's deals there to be done. But cost is also, optimization is also about rationalization, streamlining of processes, use of automation, digitalization of IT and business operations. So cost optimization can be achieved through a number of areas. And of course, savvy CEOs, as I said, will be leveraging hot technology, which we will discuss during this webinar, to also deliver those cost savings. And there's also a focus on legacy when it comes to cost. So many aspects there we'll touch on during the webinar. So reading about Gartner, various studies around cost optimization, and it's very top of mind when you go to some of the shows. But looking at Gartner's sourcing, procurement, and vendor management survey results, direct cost savings is the number one measurement of success for the IT procurement function. And another crucial measurement of success, I think it's number 3 on their list, is cost avoidance. So, of course, if you can achieve direct cost savings now, it will result in cost avoidance down the line. But there's other ways to achieve cost avoidance, and we'll talk about those a little bit later on. So looking at the high spend items, if you look at the categories of spend that make up total IT spend, one might think it's software or other tech, but actually it's salaries and benefits is the highest IT spend item in an organization. But not all organizations target salaries and benefits, but it is an unfortunate reality for some organizations when they seriously need to drive down costs. And of course, we've seen the mega vendors in our space, namely IBM and Oracle, use this tactic when targeting older, perhaps higher cost, but certainly more experienced personnel. And we've seen that happen throughout 2019.
Yeah, we've seen evidence of this actually with the age discrimination cases that have popped up in California. So they were for both IBM and Oracle.
Yeah, so as a result of what they're doing, I think there's a bit of pushback.
Yeah.
People aren't taking that lying down, so which is good to see. However, we've also observed that actually, again, savvy CIOs, smart CIOs, top performing CIOs are focusing on both the recruitment and the retention of talent, and they're trying to empower staff to expedite tech projects. It's also part of CIO's prioritization of the use of hot technologies, including AI in 2020. So, using those technologies to target manually intensive process, and the outcome of that is freeing up employees' time to deliver a better client experience. So it's not all about cutting costs. It's actually about using the tech to free up time to deliver better results and a better customer experience for the clients, hence keeping those clients and keeping the businesses driving forward, right? The second highest cost item, though, is software, when you look at the overall spend. And market estimates are that still, with new licenses, I'm not talking about SaaS licenses, I'm talking about on-prem licenses, the market size is still 150 billion, which is a staggering amount of money, and 125 billion for support. So that's a lot of dollars when you compare with the spend of SaaS, which is growing at about, it's going to about 150 billion to about the end of 22. So that 150 billion to the end of 22, equating to what it is today for new licenses. So you can see why this needs attention. It's simply not possible for CIOs and CTOs to spend money on the tech that they want to deploy to deliver the efficiencies if they don't find the savings elsewhere. So clearly software is going to get targeted. And one of the key ways we've seen to reduce that cost is to look to organizations like ourselves that can provide an alternative way to support the products. So switching to third parties for support for those main products with the view to reducing spend now, so the direct cost savings are referred to, doing that now and then also into the future, which is the cost avoidance piece, okay? In our experience, organizations are running software that's a perfect candidate for third-party support. The products are stable, they're doing what it says on the tin, and as I said, I think it's an inevitability that these costs must be targeted so that some of the tech that we're going to be talking about can be invested in. And I think one of those techs, Sharon,
yes,
is AI.
Yes, absolutely. So in the Gartner 2019 CIO Agenda Survey, IT leaders were asked which technologies they expect to be the most disruptive this year, and artificial intelligence took the top spot. So yes, it's very topical. At the moment, about 37% of organisations have already implemented AI technology or will be implementing AI technology in the very short term. It is a way for organisations to accelerate their growth, improve customer experience, as you'd mentioned, and also increase the efficiencies. Now, for a long time, the buzzword has been big data, and now companies are looking at ways to use that data, so through data management tools, automation, and AI processes. Now, AI is built on data, so the success of AI implementation really depends on data integrity and data governance. In fact, more than 70% of a data scientist's time is spent preparing data before they can even begin to build machine learning platforms. So I guess the use of AI technology really must be matched with organizational maturity and readiness. So it's not a magic pill. Organizations do need to look at their overall digital strategy and their business IT alignment strategies to maximize the results that they're going to get from AI and automation. It's also really important for organizations to consider the motivations behind AI technology and exactly what they want to achieve. So if you take the example of chatbots, that's something that we all encounter in our everyday lives. Some of them are designed to enhance the customer experience and improve the customer journey, and others are designed to replace people and reduce cost. And I guess as a customer, we can really feel the difference. So that's definitely an example of companies needing to understand exactly what they're trying to achieve with AI and automation.
Yeah, so we've all seen chatbots, we've probably experienced it, so it feels like AI is prevalent, maybe we're not even conscious about it. So it also seems like every startup coming out of Silicon Valley is labeling itself in some shape or form as an AI company, or AI is in their strategy or in their communication. But I guess they're doing that to secure venture capital funding, maybe it's just a tactic. But what is AI really delivering? Like, what is it, or where are we really seeing it today? You know, where is it making a difference in the world?
So I mean, I suppose when we think of AI in business, we definitely think about the automotive industry for sure. For me anyway, I'd say that is the most prevalent. We've seen huge transformation in that space. In the next 2 decades, it's actually expected that autonomous vehicles are going to become mainstream. So, you know, that's really impressive. But, you know, there are several other industries where AI will continue to be incredibly transformational. So I recently read an article from McKinsey & Company, and they're talking about AI in manufacturing in general, not just in the automotive space. So in manufacturing, operators are still relying on experience, intuition, judgment, and there's a heavy reliance on experience, making it really difficult for manufacturing companies to replace skilled operators at the point of retirement. So essentially, variations in the qualifications of their operators and the experience of their operators is affecting their performance and, of course, having a knock-on on their profits. So AI has the ability to preserve and improve and standardize the knowledge, creating really big wins in this area. So we're actually seeing artificial intelligence making complex operational set point decisions on its own to help manufacturing companies to produce consistency in results, regardless of the experience of the operator. So that's really quite impressive. We're also seeing it in the healthcare industry. So Deloitte produced a report on how AI is disrupting the healthcare industry. We have seen patient experience and how medical professions are actually practicing changing. We've seen changes in pharmaceutical industry operations as a result of artificial intelligence. So we have computer-aided detection systems, and they're aiding faster diagnosis of patients. We're also seeing image data analysis is making it easier to identify candidate molecules in drug discovery. So really, overall, it's already creating efficiencies and convenience. It's reducing cost. It's also reducing the room for human error when it comes to medicine practice, which is always a great thing. And it means that patients are going to get the healthcare they need easier and faster. Another really interesting use of AI that I've come across recently is in the non-profit space. So we've two examples that I've come across would be the Australian Childhood Cancer Society and also the World Wildlife Fund. And they are using SAS analytics and data management systems to maximise donations. So yes, I mean, it's clear why it is being named as the #1 game changer in technology for 2020.
Yeah, very good. And the other thing that I kind of notice when I read about AI is it seems to be driving a lot of acquisitions or mergers.
Yes.
So big tech companies buying up specialist AI companies. So, for example, Salesforce acquired Tableau for some big numbers. I think it was last year. I think we talked about it in one of our podcasts. But what I've also seen, which was quite interesting, is even non-tech companies are buying AI. So we see McDonald's, for example, recently invested in AI, having acquired a company called Dynamic Yield, worth a Google, and plan to use this technology to personalize menu experiences so they can drive more sales. So not using the technology, actually acquiring the technology.
Interesting.
Yeah. So very good. And that we'll move on to another kind of hot topic, which is cloud migration. You've already mentioned the fact that the data needs to be integrated to deliver AI. The data scientists need to work on it. So a lot of that data sits in the cloud, and I'm sure we'll see the emergence of artificial intelligence in the cloud as well. But cloud is certainly continuing to take a hold. Everybody knows it's out there. It continues to grow. Organizations want to move their on-premise technology to the cloud. They also need to then free up budgets to be able to do that, to pay for the associated projects. It can be complex, and they need to buy the licenses. So the cloud isn't free. You have to buy your licenses, and you have to pay for those annually. But I think when we talk about cloud, I think it's useful to have a quick reminder as to what are the three top areas that the cloud is comprised of. So top of the list, top of the funnel, if you like, software as a service. So software as a service being, I use an off-the-shelf application that performs a business function, such as CRM in the cloud, and we have the likes of Salesforce and Workday, leading the charge there. At a kind of more fundamental level, you've got infrastructure, right? So I just want the tin, I want the processing power, I want the storage, and AWS and Azure, obviously big players in that space. And then in the middle, you've got platform as a service. So I don't just need the tin, I don't just need the storage, I need processing, I need security, I need backup, I need operating systems on which I'm going to build my own applications, and numerous platform service providers. That's platform as a service. That's kind of the big three. But I do like to look at these things by the numbers. So let's look at some of the key figures in the industry that indicates where the market is heading. So the market is set to grow to 266 billion by the end of 2020. So an increase of 17%. So, I would have actually expected higher growth rates, but it's still a very big number. Software as a service makes up 116 billion of that, and with 94% of enterprises already using some form of cloud service. We even use many cloud services ourselves here in Origina. Infrastructure as a service is 50 billion, and growing at 24%. So actually it's outstripping the market growth by about 7%. And that's due to the demands of modern workloads. 83% of enterprise workloads will be in the cloud by the end of 2020. Right? Wow. So it may not be the latest trend. It's certainly not going anywhere, and has been the talk of the town for a long time. But still, only, so I think this is quite surprising, 1/5 of enterprise applications today run in the cloud. So there's a lot of room for growth. And the reason maybe for some of the hesitancy or why things aren't moving faster is because of the existing investment in legacy IT, and also maybe corporate buy-in. I think are kind of two of the main factors we hear about why people aren't moving faster to cloud. So the other areas around cloud that we see kind of top of the list in terms of trend are hybrid cloud and multi-cloud options. Companies are using on average 4.9% of public and private cloud options. So that's the multi-cloud option. So I'm using multiple cloud options from different vendors. That gives you choice. People want to be agnostic, and they want the portability between cloud services. We're not quite there yet. The technology to hop between cloud providers isn't fully baked yet, but Kubernetes and abstraction layers are making that a little bit more easy and possible. And we know hybrid cloud is a big one because recently didn't IBM acquire Red Hat for about $34 billion as part of its bet on hybrid cloud, and in tandem with that, they sold off $2 billion of legacy assets, probably to fund some of the $34 billion that they spent.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about a growth to $266 billion by the end of 2020. So where would you say, who are the winners in the race to say take the biggest piece of that pie?
Yeah, so that'll be the market size by the end of the year, and I'm sure it'll continue to grow thereafter. But yeah, so I think we could probably quite easily name who they are. But I'll just list some of the main players and some of the players that not everybody might have heard of. So obviously Salesforce is the big one. 3.8 billion in revenue and about 2.8 million users. So everybody knows Salesforce, used by sales teams out there for CRM. I've used it myself in numerous organizations I've worked for. Oracle, the next biggest, pretty close to run rates between itself and SAP, but human capital management, ERP being the two kind of main areas for it, and SAP with its business by design. And obviously SAP is pushing S4 HANA Cloud, which is the SaaS version of S4. So S4 being obviously the next version of S3. It runs on HANA, which is their in-memory database, so they're kind of pushing S4 on HANA in the cloud. But I think that'll take time to adopt because of, again, complexity and cost of actually achieving that migration. Adobe is next up with Adobe Creative Cloud, 2.3 million subscribers. I think we use Adobe Creative Cloud here in Origin as well. So, and it's used by more than 2/3 of Fortune 50 companies. So obviously it's kind of a go-to application for creative people. Cobweb, some people may have heard of, but it's Europe's largest Microsoft hosted exchange provider with about 6,000 businesses and 150,000 users. All right, Cobweb, so they're a European provider. Akami, again, it's a name people may not have heard of, but it focuses on secure, high-performing end-user experiences on any device, anywhere. That's its kind of value proposition. And lastly, Intuit, which is a financial management software solution. It has 4 million. They have 4 million users on their platform, and it was one of the very early entrants actually into the cloud space that remained very focused on delivering value in the cloud. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, definitely Salesforce, Oracle, SAP. I would have expected them to be right up there, but surprised to hear some new names that I hadn't come across before. Cobweb and Intuit. And
there's many thousands of organizations obviously providing cloud-based services.
Yeah, absolutely.
And applications throughout the world. So I think there'll be more to talk about that in future webinars.
Okay.
Maybe when we look at 2021.
Yes, absolutely. So with this move to cloud, where is that leaving us with legacy and on-premise and perpetually licensed software? What's happening there?
Yeah, well, good question, because obviously there has to be an impact. If you're going to move stuff to the cloud and you're going to adopt cloud and multi-cloud, you may be doing that for new business services, but if you're moving to the cloud to run business processes where you have existing legacy, then something has to happen with the legacy, right? And you've also got to free up the spend in the legacy to pay for that shift to the cloud. So most enterprises, as we know, have large legacy estates running core businesses, core areas of the business, and those need to be supported, during this migration to the cloud. So what does the future hold for those platforms is kind of what I think you're saying. So This is a conversation we see all the time here in Origina, and what we see is that there are several IT initiatives where, I guess an option to look at cost reduction on the legacy should be explored. In fact, I think it would be neglectful for organizations not to look at cost-saving options during some of these IT initiatives. So IT initiatives being where you're migrating to alternative lower cost vendors. Some of the products that our clients will have and those on the webinar will be paying for, processor value-based licenses, which are quite expensive. So there are lower cost alternatives. So moving to alternative vendor products or moving to cloud-based versions of the same product or cloud-based solutions from different vendors. So during those migration periods, certainly should be looking at alternative ways to get the legacy system supported. Sometimes it's just down to looking for value for money. An IT initiative might be simply, let's cut cost. We're spending too much money. So looking at value for money initiatives, certainly the third-party market is one way to go. And also, of course, where you see end of support announcements or end of life announcements. That's another time when you can start looking at alternative ways to support your legacy tech. And this is the very reason why Gartner predicts that this third-party market will grow from today at 351 million to over $1 billion by 2023. So that's a 200% increase. So I think the market is growing today at 33%, but it's going to grow to 200. There's going to be a 200% increase from today by the end of 2023. So clearly, it's top of mind.
Okay. So it's the right industry then, Brendan.
It looks like
we are
here to stay. But some of the reasons why people are doing this, obviously freeing up cost, about 50% over the OEM. Flexible contract terms is another one. Not having to upgrade, so no forced upgrades during this period of time. So you can still have your product supported without having to upgrade, during your transition period. And of course, you'll also get a much better and improved SLAs.
Okay. So what are the most common products that we're seeing moving to third-party support? I mean, if you could call off the top few.
Yeah, we have, I guess we've seen over the past 12 months, we've seen IBM, which is what company I know most about, selling off its legacy. So It has sold off products like Unica, marketing product, WebSphere Commerce, WebSphere Portal, BigFix, Same Time, Connections, AppScan. So it sold off a number of legacy products. In fact, it sold all of those legacy products to just short of, I think, about 1.9 billion to HCL. IBM also have sold off its algorithmic products to SS&C, and it sold some other products like its marketing products and Watson, Tea Leaf products to a new company called Acoustic, which was actually set up by some former IBM executives. So we see the mega vendors selling off their legacy. Obviously, that legacy is still being used by enterprise organizations, so they have to do something with that. But it kind of delivers an impetus to the enterprises to then do something about that and see if they can find some savings. So those products are ones that we see quite a lot. People looking to shift away from those products now that they see that the investment in those products is decreasing. Why would they continue to invest? They can shift a lot of that technology to the cloud or look for lower cost options.
Okay. And typically, are there products that companies are then migrating away from or decommissioning more regularly?
Well, yeah. Well, outside of the ones that have been sold, so IBM and others still have their legacy. For example, I'll give you a few examples, and if people have any particular ones they want to talk about, they can send in their questions. But DB2, for example, is a product we see a lot. The reasons being it's complicated to support and it's expensive to run when all costs are taken into account, right? So there's lots of other tools out there that are less expensive to deploy, and also it's harder to find the talent. The younger tech graduates don't want to learn DB2. They want to learn about MongoDB or in fact even Oracle in preference to DB2. So the talent isn't there, and some of it and it has also left IBM. Tivoli Omnibus is another one we see a lot. IBM has shifted its focus to cloud, right? So Omnibus and is not being actively sold or supported by IBM. And I think kind of the service is really down to almost nothing. So there are other options out there like Splunk or ServiceNow have an offering, and smaller organizations are also looking to replicate the success of Netcool and Omnibus. And for example, MoogSoft, Datadog, people may not have heard of those. And we've seen the same. Last one I'll give you an example of would be Infomix. Okay. I mean, according to the IBM experts that I know and that are friends with Original, IBM has relentlessly tried to kill Infomix over the last 18 years. So where are people going? They're going to SQL Server, some are going to PostgreSQL, and other databases. So there's just some examples. There may be other products that people want to hear about, like MQ and WebSphere and InfoSphere. What are people doing? But just post your questions, and we can come back to those later in the webinar or after the webinar.
Okay, perfect. So I guess really it's about organisations trying to find the balance between the legacy software and the new systems and all the various
Exactly. I think it's a tough balancing act.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know that's really the last topic that we wanted to touch on here today, Brendan. That would be TechQuilibrium. So that is what Gartner are coining, essentially the equilibrium point that defines how digital an enterprise needs to be to compete or lead in a digital society. So there's a mouthful for you.
Well, sounds complicated.
Exactly. So essentially it means getting the right mix of traditional and digital capabilities and assets. So the analysts are saying that the ultimate digital business strategy is about how quickly and how far organisations can digitalise their internal operations and their external value proposition. So organisations do need to accelerate their digital initiatives. They do need to look at the TechQuilibrium point within their industry, because the further away they are from that, the more difficult it will be for them to compete in their space. At the moment, 20% of CIOs say that product, services and revenue value proposition are digital, and 39% of workplace processes and supply chains have been made more effective with digital technology. However, the research is showing that top performing companies and top performing CIOs have over half their operations as digitalised. So, it is about increasing that as quickly as possible. It is complicated, as you mentioned, Brendan, absolutely. It's a difficult thing to achieve, and it's a conversation that must start from the top down. We've got 3 tips that I can run through quite quickly because I'm conscious of time at the moment for people. So essentially, the first is decision making. So organisations need to find the balance between humans and machines making decisions. It is estimated that by 2022, 40% of all employees will consult an AI agent before making a decision. The second is customer experience. So technology is changing customer demand and customer behaviour. The modern customer is looking for conflicting things at the same time. We want the latest and greatest, all the features on our mobile application. We also want it to be really easy to use. So CIOs are trying to balance that and create value all the way through the process for customers and keep them engaged continuously. And finally, digital society. So this is where data comes in once again. Everything is changing. Data management is now required. We have so much data due to intelligence and Internet of Things and AI. So companies must now implement strategies to promote responsible use of it. And again, it's about putting customers first. So if we look, for example, at Amazon using predictive analytics and AI to increase revenue, but also recommend products to their customers, or how Netflix will be able to predict what types of TV shows or movies you might be interested in watching, then you can see how giving your data, if you're receiving value, is useful. So hyper-personalization as a result of data sharing means that customers will be happy to share data. Therefore, organisations need to make sure that they're using it in a customer-centric way. So that's it for us for today. I know we've got a couple of questions there. We'll see what we can answer. I'm very conscious of the time. So we've one there. Brendan, you might be able to deal with this, just talking about the candidates for third-party support in general, other than the ones that you've mentioned.
Yeah. Well, quite quickly, I'm sure people are heading off to their next meetings and so forth. But very quickly, so best candidates for third-party support. First thing to look at is licensing. What is your entitlement to the software? It needs to be perpetual. It can't be a fixed-term license. It has to be a perpetual license. The other thing we look at is, what are the organizations doing with the software? What are their plans for the software? And the other thing we might look at is, what version are they on? Do they have any headroom versus the latest entitled version that or the current version that they're entitled to? So it's all about assessment. We assess the usage, we assess the risk, what are they doing with the product. For example, are they going to migrate away from the product? Are they going to use it as it is for the next number of years? They're going to go to the cloud. And then also we look at value. What value are they getting for the product today from their existing provider? So all of those things go into the mix. We assess it. We call it a feasibility assessment in our world. We're assessing the technical and commercial feasibility. So there's some of the things we would look at when identifying third party.
Okay.
I think we've got time for one more question. Do we have any further time? One more question. So, quite succinctly, how will AI impact future jobs? Obviously, there's some concern that automation will take away from human requirements.
That's a very common question. Yes, I think that's always on people's mind when we talk about artificial intelligence. Essentially, what we're estimating is that it's going to increase productivity by up to 40%, which will enable people to make more efficient use of their time. It's not about replacing people. It's about working differently. So the workforce is going to need to change its skills. There are more of a demand for digital skills in the workplace. However, you mentioned earlier on, Brendan, about investing in people. A lot of, as you said, savvy CIOs are investing in those digital skills in their workforce. So the workforce is going to change, how we work is going to change, but there will definitely still be always a demand for people.
Yeah, sounds like there's a career in data to be a data scientist.
Absolutely.
So we're out of time, but the last thing I want to say before we go is that we do have an upcoming webinar, our next webinar, which will be on Wednesday, the 25th of March. It'll be at 4:30 Central European Time, 3:30 UK and Irish Time, and 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. And it will be about IBM audit defense, so a hot topic, mastering the art and minimizing the impact. And that'll be hosted by Pierce MacDonald from License Hawk.
Fantastic.
So looking forward to that. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for co-hosting. See you next time.